supervisor, and his brother Larry Siegel is a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator. The Siegel brothers are here to answer all your questions about sex and sexuality, but we're unsure who to ask, including questions you didn't even know you had. They will also welcome guests from around the globe to talk about a wide variety of topics and issues within the fascinating world of sexuality. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Sex Talk.
Good evening, and welcome to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. My name is Ricky Siegel. I'm a certified sex therapist.
And I'm Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator.
And my super awesome big brother.
Love doing this with you. Always.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us on Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. We're on the radio in South Florida on 95.3 FM and 1470 AM. And we're live streaming on Facebook if you're joining us.
Hey,
hello.
Glad you're here.
Be sure to hit that like button and share and
follow and all that stuff.
Help us spread the word. Yes, please invite your friends to check out the show. They're also archived up on YouTube.
Yes.
After we're done. You can call in and join the conversation. We are live at 888-565-1470. And let's talk about sex.
Well, yeah. Well, let's also put, as long as we're giving out phone numbers and things like that, let's put your number out there as well for people that are interested in counseling, therapy, training.
I can be reached at 561-809-1080 or modernsextherapyinstitutes.com or shoot me an email at ricky@modernsextherapy.com.
And, of course, people can get a hold of us through the show as well.
Sure. There's that little send email button on the Facebook page. Just click it and type your question.
Click it and forget it. Oh, no, sorry. That's a different ad.
So what's to talk about in the world of sex tonight?
Well, a couple of things. One of the things we wanted to just kind of start with is, letting people know of some of the new advances, some of the things that are coming out in the field of sexual medicine.
Yes, it's another FDA approval.
Basically, it's an interesting drug, Valisi, and it's got its origins. Talk about taking a turn somewhere.
Well,
in research
every
and
one
development.
of these drugs, they usually end up being the discovery of an accidental...
This strange side effect.
Right.
Yeah.
Not what they were looking at in the first
like with
place.
Viagra, right? It was for blood pressure, for angina and high blood pressure. And in, those parts with those kinds of trials, number one is all guys. Right? That's a whole nother issue
Significant amount
that
of
needs
older
to be
guys.
addressed. Even in animal research, it's all males.
Yeah.
Women are kind of left out of a lot of medical and biomedical research.
But we also know about the frenzied research for Viagra in women after.
Well, that's
success.
kind of part of why we had all of this. Now, again, just like Viagra was originally for these cardiac issues, there was some strange and consistent entries in the guys' journals. Right? Wasn't really working very well for their heart issues or their angina.
Haven't seen this in a while.
Yeah, this weird side effect. They were all reporting getting erections where many have not gotten them for a long time. So I think it tells you a lot who runs the show, because the entire FDA approval process was pretty much bypassed once they discovered this side effect of this drug. A year and a half later, it was on the shelf.
Yeah,
which is kind of crazy in and of itself.
Yeah.
But that did open the door. And then the Holy Grail became to find something for women.
Right. Hard to believe that it's about 20 years.
Yeah, 1998.
Since Viagra was approved. And the Earth's axis was slightly shifted.
That's right. That's right. And there's been attempts. I've said this before. The Holy Grail in pharmaceuticals is to find desire in a bottle.
Where's our pink Viagra?
That's right.
That's been the cry since.
That's right. And people have been looking for that since 1998. Have not found it.
Well, there was the first so-called centrally acting, right? So it acts on the brain, not just on the crotch. Was Agi. One of the stupidest brand names I ever heard.
Yeah.
Agi, brand name for flibanserin, which again, kind of a less than impressive, sitting on the shelf antidepressant. that also some women reported in clinical trials that it gave them a little va-va-voom.
Right. And postmenopausal, and a premenopausal, and a very, very small number.
Well, the unprecedented prescribing requirements for flibanserin. This has never been seen before, where a woman has to sign a consent in the doctor's office when she gets the script, promising that she's not going to drink, and then she has to sign another consent in the pharmacy when she fills the script, again promising she won't drink. And this is a drug that has to be taken every day,
Right.
Whether she's planning on having sex or not. And I think...
and it ain't cheap.
No, it was like $400 a month.
Yeah.
And I think for that's one of the reasons why there was not the stampedes of women barreling down the doctor's office doors demanding their AD script.
Well, there was
They were
also a
just
lot of
crickets.
stuff that went on with that as well. After it was released, it was kind of a moratorium, and then it was held back, and there was all of this nonsense back and forth
every
with it.
Every step of the way.
It really was
crazy.
just
remember going all the way back to that lovely woman, I can't remember her name.
From Boehringer Ingelheim.
Boehringer Ingelheim, the first of four or three pharmaceutical companies.
That's right. That's right. And we were involved
it.
with that at that level.
Right, developing a little 3 or 4 questionnaire.
Right.
So the new the new entry
So
is
that
this,
and again, we're talking about like real time here. This is happening.
what with bremelanotide.
Yeah.
Well, it was approved this week. It got FDA approval as the next centrally acting desire pill.
Right.
Now, of course, on the listserv, right, Dr. McCarthy, brilliant pioneer and writer, sex therapist, asked, I wonder if they plan on it being used in conjunction with sex therapy or a standalone treatment. I was like, gee, Doc, what do you think? Are you a betting man?
Right.
Pharmaceutical company? Of course it's going to be a standalone
And what was
treatment.
my quote in the Philadelphia Inquirer article that came out yesterday?
Oh.
It cannot be a standalone treatment
course
because
not.
especially female sexual
for
response
how
and
many
desire
years-
is so complicated.
Okay, so centrally acting meaning it's the brain.
It's in the brain.
Right? It's not a plumbing thing
Right.
like Viagra and all the drugs like it. So we've been saying for years, if you can give a woman ecstasy, if she's married to some schlub who sits around smoking cigars and eating sardine sandwiches,
Right.
thinks it's funny to say, "Hey, pull my finger," and
Right, exactly.
Do you think she's going to be turned on and want to have sex with him?
Our old mentor, our former partner, the late great Susan Lee, used to love saying, "You want a sexual desire? You want to create desire in the brain? Do the dishes, or let your wife catch you doing the laundry,
a little
kind of thing."
old school.
Well, but yes,
Yeah.
but the point is still, I think, well taken.
The desire percolates.
Yes.
It's not something you take a pill and wait for it to kick in. Guys still misunderstand Viagra and do that whole watching the watch and watching the crotch thing.
That's right.
Oh, any minute now. I took the pill 40 minutes ago.
Right, and just waiting for it to
Right.
happen.
Like Jack and the Beanstalk throwing
Right.
beans in the
and
backyard.
and that's why the sort of additional sex therapy is so important with that drug. Just like we used to talk about even with Viagra. How
Sure.
many doctors would just throw the pill at the guy and say, "Here, have fun. Goodbye
Right.
and good luck."
They don't
we said, no,
think
no,
about
you've got to
relationship
put that's right.
factors
The
and-
context of intercourse in the relationship, the symbolic meaning that we've talked about for years of intercourse in the context of the relationship.
Even the symbolic meaning of erections.
Yeah.
It's amazing
Yeah.
how much, well, ironically, pressure guys put on themselves. And they, how often do we say most guaranteed way to lose an erection is to worry
about having an erection.
losing an erection?
Yeah.
That whole performance issue, guys mistakenly believe that an erection is the prerequisite, the mandatory equipment that you have to show up with, instead
right.
of understanding that erections are the result of arousal here. Again, talk about centrally acting. It doesn't matter how much friction sometimes. If the friction isn't joined by sexy thoughts, friction and fantasy.
Right. Well, but remember too, the point that as guys we do have those separate circuits.
Sure.
Right. We have the purely physical, where no matter what a guy is thinking about, no matter what's going on in the head, with pure physical stimulation can get an erection. That's sort of that mysterious factor that a lot of guys cannot understand, how a guy can be raped by a woman.
Right.
It's just like, well, wait a minute. That's if I'm not into it, if I'm distracted, I can't get an erection. But it's a whole different ballgame when you add the arousal, add fear, add terror. I used to tell guys, if a woman put a knife to your throat or a gun to your head, demanded that you satisfy her sexually, and stimulated your genitals while you're doing it, you'd probably have the most robust erection you've ever had. Because that is the arousal and the stimulation.
And make this distinction: the English language definition of arousal and the neurological definition of arousal.
Right. I'm speaking neurologically.
Neurologically, it doesn't matter if you're having the time of your life or
arousal is arousal.
Terrified out of your mind.
Blood pressure increases, body temperature increases, heart rate increases, muscle tension increases. That's arousal.
Right.
So, it really is an issue. So, we're looking at something that, and again, for a lot of our colleagues, it's a like it or not, it's here kind of thing.
What do you mean, the medication?
The medication. Well, the looking at sexual desire as a bona fide medical treatment. Because that's a hard message to fight from the pharmaceutical companies. Women who suffer from low sexual desire can now learn, they never knew before, but they now learn that it's a treatable medical condition, which is kind of the idea that so many sex therapists resented in the first place, going way, way back. But again, like it or not, this is what we're dealing with, and we've got to go with it.
And I've mellowed over the years. I'm not so vehement, especially since it could make the therapist's job easier to have that kind of boost or safety net. Or
the analogy we kind of started to develop, we both had that same turnaround, I think, in Jamaica.
Right.
When we were talking to that one doctor, it was the first person who told us they were using SSRIs to treat
the slow, rapid
ejaculation.
Down.
And that's when really started looking at the utility of the concept of training wheels.
Right, instead of a crutch.
Right.
A crutch implies that you're handicapped and will need this to limp along for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
Training wheels is until you don't need them anymore.
Right, and that's the thing. It's about developing the skill, keeping them up until they develop the skill. But as they're developing their skills, the medication should come down and be taken off completely.
Right.
So in that sort of dynamic, sure, it could be a very valuable tool. Right? So that was probably one of the bigger things to look at this week.
Just to put it to bed, the drug is called Vyleesi?
Vyleesi.
Bremelanotide. It's actually a compound related to some of the melanin type compounds.
Yeah, the melanocortins.
Sunless tanning products.
Well, and that's what it was originally. I don't know if we actually got around to saying that, but that was the turn that it took. It was originally being developed as a sunless tanning.
Well, it's in those products, and a lot of the melanocortin receptors in the skin, and
which we really it's fascinating, if nothing else, to realize that our eating patterns, our skin pigmentation, and a lot of our basic regulatory functions are all kind of modulated by these same chemicals. Obesity and skin pigmentation.
and estrogen.
All of the reproductive hormones.
Sure.
In fact, these melanocortins are also kind of the precursors for opiate peptides and all these other types of peptide chemicals. So, it's amazing, just really starting to really look at some of these things.
It's been in our presentations in the, coming down the pipeline.
That's right.
For several years. So I wonder how long it'll be before we hear something about spider venom.
Yeah,
right?
the Amazonian
Right,
spider venom.
That's been on that list
That's
for
right.
about just as long
That's right.
as
So that's right. We got to
bremelanotide.
take this one off the list now. The PT-141.
Yep.
Although it's still not for men.
Well, and just like everything else, I think the best punchline is it's just a better opportunity for a sex therapist, right? If people are going to run all excitedly to get the latest, greatest desire in a pill, and maybe be disappointed or maybe have trouble putting it in that context, then it just is a better opportunity for the drum we bang all the time integration of sexual medicine with sex therapy.
And it's just another tool.
And whoever's going to be prescribing this drug
Needs to be connected with sex
can
therapists.
say, here's the prescription and here's a number of sex therapists.
Yeah.
Go talk about this with your partner before you fill the script. And make sure everybody's on board and there isn't any resentment coming up that, you need a pill to get turned on when my beautiful naked body used to do it for you.
Right. Now, again, as the female partners often would have that attitude about guys with Viagra, I'm not sure how many guys are going to cop that attitude.
Absolutely right. Guys always have that pass to not have to take it personally because of cliches about female sexuality.
Yeah.
So if a guy's with a woman that complains of low desire, he can go, women, they're all like that. You got to beg them and plead, and it's a whole big thing. He doesn't have to take it personally.
Well, he's
But
also
if a-
not going to pass down an opportunity. We know how opportunistic a lot of men really
If
are.
a woman's with a guy who complains of low desire, invariably it's catastrophe.
Yeah.
She'll go, oh my God, something
Right.
wrong.
Well, what's
He's not
wrong with
attracted.
me?
He's not attracted to
Right.
me. Especially worse, he's not attracted to me anymore. And yeah, it's not the point. And a related note, it's not the point with porn either.
No, absolutely not. That's another discussion.
Yes, doesn't mean that that's what he prefers, and you can't measure up. So
That's right.
your marriage is over. But it's coming down to the. We've got a few minutes left
Right.
of our
I
last
wanna-
show of June.
That's right. So, being that it's the last show of the month, I want to make sure that we cap it off and not let it get away. I think we may have mentioned it a little bit in the beginning, but just want everybody to, we're wrapping up June, which is Pride Month, which is, I think, something that is. I don't know what the right word is. I want to sound condescending and say worth mentioning, a thing like that. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that people in the LGBT plus communities, I'm pluralizing
Plural.
that for you people that like to call it all one community,
Right.
that are still being dealt with, still issues that are unique to a lot of these populations. We're still dealing with I don't care how many Will and Graces and Modern Families and how many shows are on TV that are featuring gay people and transgender people and whatever this show is that features that. Just because we see it in the popular media doesn't really mean that the dial has moved. When we look at the number of adolescents, particularly in these sexual minorities, that attempt suicide, you're talking about something on the order of 40% of these sexual minority adolescents, or individuals in general, trying to commit suicide.
And, of course, homophobes and erotophobes, even professional ones with licenses and degrees, would hold that up as evidence of
It's a mental
that it's
illness.
mental illness. See, look,
Okay.
they're all trying to kill themselves.
That's
They're
right.
mentally
So
ill.
let's set them straight.
Of course.
It's not homosexuality that is the risk factor for substance abuse, suicide, depression, bipolar disorder,
it's-
body dysmorphia.
it's homophobia.
It's the experience of being a homosexual in this culture, in this society.
Homophobia causes all of those problems.
It's the response, not the being a homosexual.
And lest anyone get it wrong, phobia does mean fear.
Right.
And it's that purely from a place of fear does that hatred come?
Well, I think it's also appropriate to add homonegativity in that as well, because I don't think it is all based on fear. There's a lot of homophobic roots that are really misogynistic.
Yes, that doesn't get talked about enough. That is a huge part of the attitudes that fuel homophobia. It's that don't you
feminize
treat me the way it's perfectly acceptable for me to treat a woman.
Right.
So I can pinch and grab ass and make catcalls, but if you do that to me, you must think I'm a woman. So I'm inferior. So I'm a B word, and I have to get violent to defend against that. Right? The fear of being perceived as gay.
That's right.
By being seen with one.
Right.
Right.
But even again, going back to the misogynistic aspect of it, you take a 9-year-old boy. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you throw a homophobic term at him. It doesn't matter if you throw a feminine term at him. They're the same.
That's what it's about.
They're the same. It's the same fighting words.
Budding masculinity.
That's right.
You throw like a girl.
Right.
It has nothing to do with sex.
Nope.
It's the role, and even for a little 8-year-old, it's that male ego is fragile enough that if it's threatened, we have to react angrily and later violently.
Right.
To defend, isn't that ironic?
Yeah.
It
really is.
To defend one's masculinity, he has to live up to all of the worst cliches and stereotypes about masculinity.
Yeah, it is nuts. It really is.
So Pride Month is about a celebration, of course,
of diversity.
Again, just like racists love to say, why do we have Black History Month? Why don't we have White History Month? Oh, I'd get in trouble if I proposed White History Month. Aside from the obvious.
Well, white history is just called history.
You're right. Exactly.
That's the problem.
Yeah. The same thing. Why do we have to have a month to celebrate those people? And I bet you can guess the woman whose face I'm picturing right now.
Yeah.
Well, why do we have to talk about those people? Right? It's of course it has its political roots.
Yep.
It's also the 50th anniversary of the
Stonewall
riots when. A lot of the buzzword these days is intersectionality, right? So it's hard enough as it is for sexual minorities, gays and lesbians and transgender people. How about like transgender women of color?
Well, that's
and
when you start adding exactly that intersectionality stuff.
And,
absolutely.
Denial of any voice whatsoever.
And not just women.
I mean, but a lot of people don't realize that Stonewall. And there was another demonstration that preceded Stonewall at another club. It was a lot of trans women of color that were really on the front lines because they were being abused at the hands of police.
That's right.
Violence against them was completely ignored. And still to this day, trans women of color bear the greatest brunt of violence.
In every developed country in the world, we see these horrific, every single day, murder rates of particularly trans women. And a majority of them are trans women of color.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it does seem to be something that people don't really care that much about, it seems. Right? Yeah, we have homophobia, right? And there's at least a certain awareness of that societally.
Right.
But we're not anywhere near even that level of things when it comes to trans women.
Transphobia.
Yeah. And that whole transphobia.
Now
and it is mostly, I find
the
very
Vatican
interesting.
chiming in last week that it's not a real thing.
It's not a real thing. It's just a preference. It's just
why
an
did people
act.
that don't know anything about sex don't know when to STFU and keep their nose out of people's private affairs that they have no knowledge of anyway?
Yeah.
Is the Vatican going to issue decrees on anything to do with sexuality? Yeah.
Right. And that's, to me, one of the most ludicrous aspects of homophobia, transphobia, and all these prejudices, that there is what I consider a truly, stunningly ignorant notion that the simplest organisms on the planet have all kinds of diversity. Right? We've got 700 types of mosquitoes.
Yeah.
There's 1,200 blades of grass. So why is it that they have to insist that the most complicated organism on the planet is only one type?
Humans, right?
Right.
And one type of sex.
That's it. Well, I'm sorry, two types, male or female. That's it.
Right.
That's it. The most genetically diverse and diffuse organisms on the planet have one very strict genetic slate that is supposed to just get copied person after person after person after person after person.
Like clones.
It's just dumb. Just plain and simple.
Yeah, I mean, that's the message, I think, is just celebrating the diversity. Not this, people get all bent out of shape that feeling like something is being shoved down their throat and they're being forced to accept gay people.
Right.
I refuse to allow weirdos come into my kid's school and tell them it's okay to be gay. Well, forget about that stupidity. When we just acknowledge the diversity, I think Michael Aaron said this, once you add up all of the others, that's the majority.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Orientation, gender, kink, all of these marginalized and stigmatized communities.
That's really the majority, yeah.
The quote-unquote vanilla heterosexual missionary position only, that's fast becoming the minority in the world.
Right. And, also before, I don't want to run out of time, before just sort of cap our cap here, that, even when we look at a lot of these, again, general sexual minority folks, the alphabet soup people, the others. And again, I still think it's really a disrespectful way of conceptualizing all of this. Yeah. But I think it's also important that professionals, physicians, nurses, mental health professionals need to understand that while there are no necessarily health issues that are specific to people that are gay, there are a lot of health issues that are particularly problematic among gay people because they don't have the kind of resources that a lot of other people have. They don't have the physicians.
Let me plug Modern Sex Therapy Institute's one of our new certificate programs in LGBTQIA affirmative therapy. We're very proud of that. You can find out about it on the website. And you know what the music means. So, thank you all for joining us this week. And we'll be here next Monday and every Monday at 9 o'clock for more Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers.
Yes, indeed. Thank you and have a great week.
You've been listening to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us every Monday night at 9 p.m. on WNN, 1470 AM and 95.3 FM. Or watch live streaming video at AMP2TV Productions on Facebook or look for the shows on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again next week. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of the station, its staff, management, or sponsors.